Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we're going to make our character jump. So to do that, we're first going to go into our code. So we're going to open up our player movement scripts. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable. I'm going to make this a private variable, and it's going to be a Boolean. I'm going to name this is grounded. And for its default state, I'm going to set this to false. Alright, so I'm going to use this true-false statement to check whether or not my character is touching the ground. And if that is grounded, then we're going to let them jump. Now, when creating a 2D game, rather than using update for jump in physics, it's actually better to use a fixed update. So we're just going to change our void from void update to void fixed update. And then we're going to put in our jumping script. Now, with the moving script, it's always better to have jump at the top, right? Because our script is going to always be reading from top down. So we're going to change our if statement here to an else if. All right, and that will enable us to simply move it down a little bit and create our new if statement. So we want to be checking for an input. We're going to be getting the key, and this time we're going to use get key down. And all that does is it will check for the input once on the downstroke, and it will stop repeatedly checking for it. And I'm going to use the up button for that. We'll put our brackets in. All right, rather than just putting in straight our jumping script, we want to check whether or not our character is grounded, because if we don't do that, you'll be able to jump essentially infinitely. So we're going to use a second if statement, and we're going to be checking if it is grounded. Now, if it is grounded, we want to jump. The way we're going to do that is we are going to get a component, and we're going to be getting our rigid body that is 2D. And then once we have our rigid body, we want to add a force to it. And we're going to add a force using the vector 2D. So we can add it on two different dimensions. The first dimension is our x dimension, which we don't want to add any force to, so we're going to set that to 0. And the second dimension is our y direction, and we're going to set that to, let's say, 300 for now, just as a test. Now that we've got that, we need to set our isGrounded Boolean to true somewhere. So we're going to use a trigger to do that. So we're going to create a new void, and we're going to say on trigger enter 2D, because it's a 2D game. All right, we're going to check whether the collider, and we're going to name it col. And we want to use this to check if the collider called col is interacting with an object or not. So we're going to say if col.gameObject. So we're looking for a game object, and we're going to look for the tag of the game object, and we want to see whether or not it is equal to, let's name it ground. Now, if that is true, we're going to set our variable is grounded to equal true. All right, so our script is going to be looking for a trigger, and we're going to be checking whether or not that trigger is touching an object that is tagged as ground. So let's save our script and go back to our game. Right, we're going to open up our player. I'm just going to shrink down the capsule collider in the rigid body 2D, and I'm going to add a new collider. So I'm going to search for coal, and I'm going to add a box collider 2D to it. All right, you can see the box collider here. All right, so on the y-axis here, I'm going to shrink it down to 0.2. All right, you can see it's nice and thin. All right, and on the offset position here, all right, I'm just going to click on the Y and drag it downwards until it sits just below our player. Right, and right here where it says is trigger, I'm going to click on that. Right, so this is going to be our trigger here. So whenever this trigger here touches something tagged as ground, right, you can see up here my tag, which my player is currently untagged. Right, if this trigger touches something that's tagged ground, it's going to set that boolean to true. So now we need to create a tag called ground. So I'm going to go to my ground prefab. Now we can see over here that it's currently untagged, so I'm going to click on the untagged. I'm going to go down to add tag. Right, the tags list is empty, so I'm going to click the add button, and I'm going to create a tag called ground. Right, save that. I go back to my ground prefab and then change the tag here to select that new one we just created called ground. Right, I should be able to open up my world here, click on any of these grounds, and you can see that they are now tagged as ground. Right, we'll open up our prefab, select our two squares, and we're going to tag them as ground as well. Right, so the parent folder and the two children of it should all be tagged as ground now. Right, I've got a small problem with my code here on line 15. I've written vector 2D instead of vector 2. So I will save that. All right, now we're going to press the play button. We're going to test whether or not our jump button works. So left and right still work. Right. And there we go. Jump button is working. Right, I'm going to go jump back in my code, and I'm going to change my boolean here to a public bool. Right. By changing that to a public bool, what we'll be able to do is go into play. We'll be able to select our player. Right, scroll to our script. You can see here that is grounded is true. We will jump. Right, and is grounded is staying as true. That's because in our code here, where we've checked is grounded is true and then we've jumped, we've never set is grounded to false. So, right, we're going to go into our scripts and we're going to save it to set it to is grounded is false once you press that key. Right, make sure I've left play, save that, go back into our code, into our game. Test it once more. Right, select our player, here's our is grounded, jump, becomes false, and then it becomes true again. All right, that is working much better. That's it for this video, ladies and gents. Catch you in the next one.